Signal is court proven to not be able to hand over almost any user data, considered one of the most reputable security services in the world to keep your messages safe, doing some really weird things I'm a little bit concerned about. Now, I'm a proud Signal user. Anyone who's watched the channel knows I love Signal. It's my main messenger. We even have it as like our private little group that we use for our patrons. So this video isn't even to discourage the use of Signal, but I have things I want people to think about, and it's things that I've been thinking about as well. Many people don't consider that the notes they take are actually extremely sensitive, and there are many privacy implications about where this data goes and who has access to it. The sponsor of this video is Notesnook, and they're aiming to make notes more private and secure, especially relative to some other mainstream counterparts. Notesnook is open source. They have many features you'd expect to find in other very popular productivity tools. It's all end-to-end encrypted, meaning they can't even see your data if they wanted to, checklists and reminders, and they just released a V3 rebranding, which looks phenomenal. If you're somebody who wants to keep your current productivity but improve the safety of that productivity, Notesnook is pretty much a no-brainer. And again, it's open source, and also they have a really solid free offering too, so there's no risk in trying it out. And they make it super easy to switch to from your current tools. Check out Notesnook down in the description, and I really want to thank Notesnook for sponsoring our content. We really can't do it without great services like them. So thank you, and go check out Notesnook down in the description. A few weeks ago, MISC, a small security research team, went public with a Signal desktop vulnerability where they copied the data from the Signal app, the desktop one, like user chats, to another fresh operating system. And what they found is that when they started Signal back up, all the chats were just there. This means if a malicious app on your computer wanted to, it could essentially just clone your Signal messages and easily view them on a different machine, or actually a local person or attacker could steal your Signal messages if you don't have something like full disk encryption. The new machine that received the messages apparently is an active Signal device that continues to receive new messages, which didn't even show up in your linked device portal, so there was no way for you to know that someone else was receiving your Signal messages. I think the worst thing about this is this has been a public open issue for years now that Signal has never addressed and repeatedly chose not to fix. It wasn't until this blew up on Twitter that Signal finally said, okay, we'll fix it. Meredith, who's the president for Signal, doubled down on how this isn't really an issue they care about because Signal isn't concerned about local security threats on your machine, which has some validity to it. Signal can't stop all these local attacks that can happen and side channel attacks and things like that, but to many people's view, including my own, it doesn't excuse sloppy endpoint security. And now MISC has followed up with a recent post saying Signal for desktop has been updated twice since these issues went viral, and there's no mention in the changelog if it's been fixed. So either it's not fixed yet, or they just don't want to include the fact that it was fixed in the changelog. Neither of those are particularly desirable things that we want. Now, vulnerabilities like this happen all the time, and they're not exclusive to Signal. In fact, these exact issues were impacting other messengers as well. To me, what's concerning here is Signal's response, because I really want to remind people here that Signal is kind of the gold standard, and they're setting standards and supposed to be pushing the envelope on security to the point, I want to remind people, where their protocol, the Signal protocol, is actually used in countless other messengers, and the technologies they implement can be found in a lot of other places borrowed from Signal. Now, there's a lot of other side stories kind of speaking to this issue. Cure53 is one of the largest and most reputable security audit companies. When a VPN company says they've been audited, 9 out of 10 times it's Cure53 that conducts those audits. So ExpressVPN, NordVPN, Molvad, iVPN, Mozilla VPN, Surfshark, TunnelBear, the list goes on, and even non-VPN services use Cure53 for their audits, like Bitwarden, NitroKey, 1Password, Briar, F-Droid. These are all just phenomenal services. I'll actually leave a list of some of their publications below. Signal, on the other hand, blocked one of Cure53's researchers from both Twitter and GitHub, and I don't think they know or anyone knows why, except the fact they were bringing up this security incident that was reported years ago. And of course, when stuff like this happens, some people are already rushing to saying this makes Signal compromised or a honeypot or 100% insecure. I disagree. I see this as super sloppy and a genuine vulnerability. We see vulnerabilities in some of the best software, and it doesn't remove the many protections that Signal still offers its users that are still really legitimate. And I already said this on a thread that I posted. I think what people are missing, and the real issue here, is this is a really pivotal moment where Signal, the people setting standards on how to conduct themselves, conducted themselves improperly and is setting a pretty bad example. Like I said in my post, akin to how the people rely on yelling on Twitter to get big tech to fix critical issues, Signal was now the org being yelled at for pretty legitimate reasons. So this is ultimately the behavior that I think makes people distrust big tech companies and migrate to different services, traditionally like Signal. So when Signal behaves this way, it's really tough to justify, and people are going to lose trust and then migrate to something else. And I think that's actually the problem for the end user. In my position right now, I don't know what kind of mainstream messenger I can recommend to people at the moment. There are tons of niche messengers out there that we talk about. There's things like Briar, there's things like SimpleX, and I mean, even Session. All these messengers have certain advantages and disadvantages, but the reality is I don't think usability-wise they're quite there yet for me to go to people and say, hey, you should ditch iMessage and instead use this for all your contacts. It's a bit of a jump, and maybe one day they'll get there, and that's very personal preference. It's just not something I'm going to be doing with people I know. So if people are migrating from Signal to something else, I feel like they're either going to have to jeopardize their security and privacy and move to something less private or less secure, or they're going to have to move to something that's less usable and less likely to get people to use a secure messenger. So it's a really tough spot, and it's really making it difficult for not just all of you to maybe decide what to do, but especially for people in our position. The big thing that's been happening behind the scenes I've noticed with people giving privacy and security advice, or just experts I talk to, is they're scared to criticize Signal too much because they fear people will move away from Signal to less safe alternatives. It's really tough to kind of balance this and say, okay, yeah, Signal is acting and behaving really inappropriately, but we don't really have a better suggestion. Takeaways for this video. You might be asking, oh my gosh, should I stop using Signal? None of this from a security and privacy perspective is a reason, in my opinion, to move away from Signal. It's important to recognize that Signal for desktop has always kind of lacked some of the security model that's found on mobile. So if you're somebody who really has high security needs, maybe try to switch away from Signal for desktop and stick to only Signal on mobile. There are always those more niche alternatives to Signal. I think what I'm really trying to touch on here is that this is a lot bigger than the security vulnerability. This has to do with how an organization that's supposed to be a nonprofit, open source, community-based organization is not functioning in a way that's for the community. And sadly, we're kind of seeing this with other massive privacy companies right now that are releasing and doing things that aren't really things that you might think a company dedicated to user privacy would be doing. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too on the situation, because this is something that I think people should really be paying attention to. I think Signal has some work to do to rebuild the community's trust in them. And until they do that, I think that the theories behind Signal, many of which I don't fully believe in, are going to keep getting more and more extreme. I think people like myself who just want to feel like they're recommending a safe tool are going to be questioning the recommendation as time goes on. Leave your thoughts below, and if you enjoy this kind of content, check us out down below at patreon.com/Techlore to support us. We also support Monero, we're on Ko-fi, and all this great stuff. And also I want to thank Notesnook especially. They're our new gold video sponsor. They've been sponsoring our forum forever now, and now they're sponsoring our video content, and I just want to say they're phenomenal. They're open source, and they're trying to pretty much keep all your notes private and just for you. So check out Notesnook as well down in the description. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Techlore.